Hey, this is a presentation on climate change. So the effects of climate change has affected the entire world for a short period of time. So it could be abnormal weather patterns. It could be droughts, such as droughts or hurricane. No, not hurricanes. Just droughts and floods specifically. And the more we know about climate change, the more people will want to take action. And it has been one of the deadliest man-made disasters that has affected wildlife, urban areas and rural areas, and all around the world. So what is climate change? Climate change includes both global warming driven by human emissions of greenhouse gases and the resulting large-scale shifts in weather patterns. So these are examples. The effects of climate change again has affected. These events have affected the entire world, for such a short period of time. We don't even see it, but it's happening. Leading factors of climate change: fossil fuels, oil, gasoline, use of that, the overuse of it, and agriculture, deforestation do also contribute to the rise of climate change. In fact, over 15 billion trees are being cut down annually. And that just brings more CO2 in the atmosphere because now the trees can't absorb the CO2 and turn it into oxygen for us to breathe. And another fun fact is that trees is that there are just a bit over 3 trillion trees around the world. But then we tend to overestimate the amount of trees by cutting billions of trees yearly and thinking, oh, we still have a lot left. But that's not the case because each tree does matter. Each tree contributes a lot of absorb. They contribute by absorbing as much CO2 as possible and converting it to oxygen for us to breathe. Now, the effects of climate change again would include abnormal weather patterns like drought, and it would also affect the food water supply. It would cause ice sheets to melt, and um, let's see. Studies show that in rural areas, runoff, transport, animal waste can easily enter the water supply because of abnormal weather changes. So what this is telling us is that poor areas are more likely to have a larger effect. Uh, that's what studies show, and we have to be prepared for that. Those people have to be prepared for that. Rising sea levels is also a big factor to climate change uh, as the Earth gets warmer and warmer. Ice sheets, glaciers are melting and just melting. So, for example, Greenland and Antarctica, you see that their ice sheets are melting each quicker and quicker each year, each day, each year. And the satellite shows that for this graph, it, the melting is getting worse and worse and worse. Additional effects of climate change or rising sea levels would lead to thermal expansion, melting glaciers, and ultimately the loss of the ice sheets of Greenland and Antarctica. So I would predict that by 2040, most of the ice sheets will be gone. And that also leads to more species extinctions like polar bears, which, by the way, we have only 25,000 left around the world, specifically in Antarctica. So, and as polar bears are losing their habitats, more and more of it are just dying. Um, and it's harder for them to find food because they just can't adapt to their habitats at all. Again, in order for a species to adapt, it takes a lot of time. And like I said, climate change is happening really, really fast, really quickly. And I don't think polar bears are fast enough or quick enough to find adaptation. Uh, So I'd say in, let's say, 10 to 15 years, most of polar bears are probably going to be extinct by then. Consequences, I've specified the consequences here, but additional consequences would include constant constant abnormal weather changes, and it will lead to constant flooding around random areas. We've experienced flooding. No, flooding has been experienced in California, like in LA, the past, I'd say the last 4 years. Um, and somewhere in Florida, Texas has experienced flooding as well. We'll experience more and more of that more commonly if climate change does continue to be prolonged. In addition to that, we will experience more soil contamination uh, due to powerful storm surges, and in the end, millions of people will experience flooding more frequently as the days go on. So the only way we can handle this is through mitigation, adaptation, rethinking ways to rebuild homes and roads when sea levels do reach its peak, and then utilizing clean energy, and then such as renewable energy like solar energy and wind energy, and then also purchasing an electric vehicle also does make a huge difference. Um, and in terms of adaptation, we really have to strengthen our our infrastructures more, and try to manage infrastructures that abuse fossil fuels, and try to make a change through allowing them, or just allowing them to convert or stop with their actions that would contribute more to climate change. And further regulations must be needed in order to stop certain infrastructures like that. How far will climate change go? Disasters, as long as we don't contribute enough, I think disasters will continue to accelerate, and coastal cities will experience more and more flooding, and oceans are expected to rise to around 10 to 30 inches within 10 years. So that really leads back to rethinking ways to rebuild homes and roads when this peak has been reached. And the solutions use renewable energy, stop cutting down trees, convince more and more people to buy solar panels and contribute to that. And then these are the only primary solutions I could think of. Unfortunately, these solutions will not really come into play because, again, we have the business side of it as well, where we have to cut down trees for certain businesses to succeed, and without that, people will lose a lot of money. So that's also sort of a big problem here. Fun fact: timber harvesting in tropics alone contribute 1.5 billion metric tons of carbon into the atmosphere. So this represents around 20% of human-made greenhouse gas emissions. If that alone creates 20% greenhouse gas emissions, or human-made greenhouse gas emissions, I can't imagine all the other activities that, when you combine it together, how many percentage do these harmful things contribute? All in total contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. I'd say it's around near 100%. This is why it's so drastic that these actions have to be taken, and within a few years it's not going to be the same. Okay, so and these are sources. Thank you.